Hi, it's Tony here from Refinement, Not Retirement, the podcast where we say refine your life, don't retire from it. We've been telling our story of how we lived seasonally in the winters in Southwest Florida for the best part of 12 years. This is part 5 of that story. If you
Gosh,
haven't, if you haven't listened to the previous 4 parts, then I would strongly encourage you to do so because it is an ongoing story and it won't make complete sense if you don't have the background. This podcast is co-hosted by myself and my darling wife, Christine, who's here with me, as those of you watching on video can see.
hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello. So let's just have a quick recap. So this story started in the very early 2000s, and when we went over to Southwest Florida, found a home, and bought it. Our main home, we were at all times UK residents and UK citizens. Our main home was in Kensington in central London, where our business was also. That's where we spent our summers, but our winter home that we had just acquired at the end of our trip there was in Naples, Southwest Florida. So our objective in telling the story is to perhaps help others who are considering getting their own place in the sun. I think we certainly learned a huge amount from our journey, which ended with us selling up out there, and we're going to tell you a bit about that. Uh, about 12 years after we arrived there. And so where did we get to at the end of part 4?
Can I
Well,
just throw in something just quickly? I just
absolutely.
wanted to just throw in that without us even realizing it, we were refining ourselves as far back as then.
Hmm.
If you think about it, we didn't really even, I don't think we'd even considered the word or even knew much about it because retirement was not on our agenda in those days. But when you look back and the way we're talking about it, I feel that we were without realizing it always finding ways to refine ourselves, weren't we?
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point because I was a little bit losing sight of our central theme of this podcast, because the central theme of this podcast is, of course, that we are encouraging people not to think in terms of retirement, but to think in terms of refinements that you can make to your life, continually improving it. Because so many people, I'm sure you listeners will have encountered this yourselves. So many people, they prepare for years, decades for their retirement life, and so many arrive there, they retire, and then perhaps one of the couple gets a bad diagnosis, or worse than that, leaves the planet suddenly, and all of that preparation comes to naught.
Well, yes.
It would have been so much better to start preparing for a different kind of lifestyle much earlier, and that's what we did, wasn't it, Chris? We didn't go there thinking of ourselves. Well, we weren't retirees. We went there in order to make a big change, a big refinement
Yeah,
to our lives.
to enhance our lives. And I think just going back to that retirement, I think people don't know what they're because how can you foresee into the future? One can't ever do that. And I say this all the time to the kids and everybody. It's about the now. It's the
Yeah,
past
the
is
now.
gone and
Yeah.
we can't get that back. And the future, we have no clue about the future. So we have to, as much as we can, live for the now. And I think we were very successful in doing that. When things felt right, we got on and did them. We didn't think, oh well, let's wait until we retire because we hadn't thought about it, and we didn't think, oh let's look at maybe getting a place in the sun when we retire that we can go to. Because I think we've said in previous episodes, we were never going to be able to retire to Southwest Florida. We couldn't retire to America. So we were just doing it while we could, because we could afford to while we were still working. And we just wanted to enhance our lives, to better ourselves, enjoy ourselves, because we could, afford to do it a little bit more. And so we went for it. And I think the way we've lived our lives, and I don't mean this in a boasty way, but I feel that we've made positive moves in everything we do, in our attitudes, in our lives, everything. And that's what I hope comes across to everybody listening, that we are very positive, fun-loving people that really care and want to enjoy, but also want to share with others our experiences and our lives, and make memories, really. And I think that's very important, making memories, because we don't know,
what's around the corner.
What's
Nobody
around
knows.
the
Nobody
corner.
knows when
And I
they're going
know
to get that bad
yeah,
diagnosis, or their
no,
partner. They lose their partner. You just don't know. So it's all about the precious present, isn't it? Making the most,
it really
grasping the
is. It
precious
really is.
present.
It's so important.
And when we arrived, of course, and we mentioned this in earlier parts to this story, when we arrived to our new community, our new home, our new life in Southwest Florida, I mean, so many of those people had, quotes, retired. They were considered themselves to be in retirement. They weren't working anymore. They were considerably older than us.
Well, not considerably, actually,
Well, of course,
because
not in all cases, but I mean,
no,
they were significantly older, I think,
but there were a lot of
in many
snowbirds.
cases.
Don't forget, in North America, where most of the people came from, was snow, as they call them. So they had their second home in preparation for retirement. And I think there's isn't there something in Florida where you can homestead? So where a lot of North Americans had two properties. But if you put something to do with, isn't
Well,
it, for not
if you
having to
became a
pay,
Florida resident,
which is
so
homesteading,
they might
correct?
have a home in Canada, for instance, but they could opt to become a Florida resident. They could
Yes,
homestead there, and that would drastically reduce their property taxes, equivalent of
correct.
council tax, but much higher.
And that's what people were doing.
Yeah, but
I
I don't think
think a
I
lot of
don't
them.
think that is I don't think that's at odds with what I'm saying. Snowbirds could very well, and very often were, people who had retired. All snowbirds means is that they're people who fly south for the summer.
Oh yes, yes,
Yeah.
and they wanted they were living in a lot of a lot of them were living in the Chicago, Michigan, Minneapolis, New York, cold places in winter,
Yeah,
and they really wanted to have that warm winter sunshine.
certainly. But what
So
I'm
that
saying
was
is they
important
were
to them.
still significantly older than us.
I don't know what you mean by significantly
Well,
older,
at
though.
least 10 years.
Yes,
At
yes,
least
okay,
we were in our
yeah.
mid 40s. In fact, I think probably nearer 20 years, because we've just come back. Wasn't expecting this conversation to take this turn, so
Sorry.
but no, not at all. I think it's I like the fact that this is an unscripted show, and our conversations go
Yes.
wherever we want to go, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Where was I? Yeah. So when what was I going to say? When we arrived there, we were in our mid 40s, so we were very young for that kind of community. And I think the majority of people who became our friends were quite significantly older than us, 10 to 20 years older. And now that we recently came back, didn't we? We had a trip. We've mentioned this. We've not long been back from that Southwest Florida, because we like to go back there regularly in order to see our friends there. A lot of those friends who were people that we were playing tennis with, people that we were going out to dinner with a lot and going around to their houses. They're coming around to our house for parties and so on. A lot of those people are now moving into what they call retirement communities, which I find a little bit ironic, because I'd thought that the community that we lived in there, the Fiddler's Creek where we live, gated community, I thought that was really a retirement place. I'm sure you did too.
Yes,
But
yes,
now
it came as a shock.
these people now are literally moving into what we would call care homes. They're
Yeah.
very often moving as couples into a care home setup, but they're nothing like the care home you would recognize in the UK. These are like, 5+ star resort lifestyles,
Where they
restaurants there,
purchase their own
taking
home.
fine dining restaurants and all sorts of stuff. And so, but my point is, this is like retirement stage too. I would say it's almost like God's waiting room,
Yeah.
this next thing.
Yeah,
So
and I think we have talked about that before,
yeah,
I think in
we
a
have. But
previous episode. So
let's get
let's get
back to
back
our
to,
story because but I think that I'm glad you brought that up because that is very central to our theme of refinement, not retirement. The whole thing
yeah.
that we're talking about, the umbrella theme of this podcast. So I'm glad you brought that up and you brought us sort of back on track. But we're telling the story now. So we told you, dear listener, about the condo that we found. Fantastic condo. Christine worked with an interior designer, made it beautiful, and it really suited us in so many ways. And it was really, really cheap in those days. I mean, ridiculously cheap.
And the dollar against the pound
That
was very
helped. That made
helpful
it
on that,
even cheaper,
significantly. Yeah.
even cheaper. But we were at the early stages of this huge development, and we really got the best of it, I think, because there were so few homes sold at that time. But
So
what
to
we
be in at the beginning was fantastic. We made a lot of friends very quickly,
yeah,
had started having a terrific social life.
absolutely. We'd never experienced
And
anything like it, have we? I mean, just
no,
nothing ever like it.
and love the development. I mean, we just to the point where I think we're coming to is that we loved it so much. We wanted to move up in the world, if
Well,
you like.
it wasn't just that. I mean, certainly, a lot of our friends there, including English friends, had what they call single family houses over there, and we had a condo. So we were on the upper floor. We would call it here the first floor. They would call it there the second floor. Um, so obviously we didn't have, since we were in effectively a flat, uh, we didn't have what am I looking for? A swimming pool. That space at the back. We had a little balcony, which was still called a lanai, but we didn't have a proper lanai. And really, the thing about living in Southwest Florida, or Florida anywhere for that matter, but particularly Southwest Florida, where the weather is even the most gorgeous of the whole of Florida, the thing about there is you live outside mainly, don't you? All your
You
meals,
do.
breakfast, lunch, dinner, you would eat, when you're not eating out, which they do a lot of, you would eat on your own lanai, next to your pool if you had a house. And that was sort of very alluring to us, that idea. But uh, more than that,
The house
we saw the
prices were
how they
going.
thank you. We saw the house prices, the values shooting up, and we saw everybody making one stage move to the right, if you like, going up the curve. Everybody was upgrading, weren't they? Everyone,
Well,
but
even the people in the houses already were
yes,
moving to the next development. And
exactly.
I'm thinking, but their house is gorgeous. Why are they going up again? And everybody suddenly moving from
Yes,
one little, village to another little village within the community.
absolutely. So seeing seeing the prices just rocketing up, we decided that we were going to have a look, and long story short, we found a house. Actually, it was owned by an English couple, who were also they were moving up too, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
They were
Yes,
moving up too, and now we were thinking, well, because don't I mean, this wasn't a massive house that we were buying. It was a modest house. It wasn't that much bigger in floor space to our condo. Actually, it might have even
actually, it
been
wasn't
equivalent
really. No.
size, but it did have it was only one floor, so it's called a sort of villa style. It had what it did have is a gorgeous view out the back because we were on a golf course. Not that we like, neither of us like golf, but it still made for a beautiful view at the back, and we had a pool. We didn't have a hot tub, but we had a pool, which really made a difference to our lives, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Because we
And
could,
the grandkids were coming, where they were
yeah,
being born furiously and quickly, and we were very excited to to share the pool with the children. In fact, I think just quickly, Ben, our eldest grandson, turned 21 on Friday, and he was a tiny little tot, if you remember, when
Yes.
they first came to the house.
Yeah.
And it was sweet, him and little Tyler, who's now 18,
Yes. Of
you know, sitting on the step of the pool. Do you remember?
course I do.
Just loving the swimming
We used
pool.
to have
This
those
sweet.
fantastic pool volley games, didn't we? Oh, it's just great. And of course, you know, when you and
And
I
I
were,
brought those fish, those little fish. Do
yeah,
you remember
there's
I
little
brought those
fish,
little
yeah.
battery fishes, so they were swimming around in the water. Woo!
Yeah, it was amazing, and I have, you know, there's no doubt about it. Living in a house was quite different, and you know, I like to play the piano, and we had our piano in the condo, but I don't know, somehow everything was just a lot nicer in the house. So we started having parties.
We had New
Um,
Year's Eve parties,
we had
didn't
New Year's
we? If
Eve
you remember,
parties in the
moved
house,
all the furniture and
and
karaoke and piano
yeah,
playing, and
and
we had a Bose
Christmases,
system in the house. Do you
and
remember? We
yeah,
had a
of course,
Bose put in throughout all the
yeah.
speakers throughout the house, which was terrific.
And Christmases in a house were just another level, weren't they? I mean, first of all, Christmases in America are always fun, and it seems a bit odd to people, doesn't it? Spending
It
Christmas
does,
time when you
yes.
think of snow and frost and stuff. Uh, it seems odd to spend it in a tropical climate.
But we loved it.
But
We
actually,
just
we
got to
did.
love
We
it.
did. I
We
mean, you
did
know,
love
you
it.
can walk around in shorts,
We
looking
had the
at
Christmas
beautiful
tree
Christmas
up.
decorate because they do decorate their houses. You know, National Lampoon Christmas, so it
We did,
springs to
and we
mind.
had bike. We did bike riding on Christmas Day. Have a quick swim while the dinner was on.
Well,
And
you remember
just it was
the bike ride on Christmas Day was round the golf course. We would actually go on the golf cart track,
yes.
and it was amazing. I mean, it took about an hour to get round the golf course by bike, and we were cycling between alligators, weren't we? Because
Well, and
the
you weren't
golf course was
supposed to
covered
actually
in them.
cycle on there because it
Well, it was the
was
one day of the year that the golf course
when
club was
was
closed,
closed.
so we were
So we'd
able
all
to.
meet, didn't we?
So
We'd meet at the
it
club
was
and we'd all get on our bikes and all pedal round. It was
yeah,
fabulous.
it was an annual tradition on Christmas Day. You know, loads and loads of us would meet at the golf club cart barn with our bikes, and we would all set off at the same time. We would go around this, you know, weaving in and out the alligators, the lakes, fantastic wildlife,
The
egrets, and
birds and
you know,
yes.
and so on and so forth. And then you remember the next tradition straight after that. What did we do?
Well, no, I think it was Boxing Day. I know what you're going to say.
Oh
It
no,
was
I
actually
think
Boxing Day. It wasn't Christmas
oh
Day. The
well,
Bloody Marys.
yeah, my memory
No,
was
Boxing
that we
Day.
went straight from the. I mean, I certainly remember doing it once, if not more, but we would go straight from there because I can remember wobbling around on my bike after the Bloody Marys.
No, well, I thought that was Boxing Day because we'd always go back for our Christmas dinner. But
Okay, but you know that
maybe I've got it wrong. But
when we have these disputes, I'm always right. Remember
yeah, right.
that.
Bloody
Anyway,
Mary was when I fell off my bike. I know that.
anyway, it was living in the house was fantastic, as you say. Having the family over, it made such a difference. And of course, we had a proper garage in the other one, but now we had a full size double garage. You just literally drove into the garage with your shopping, and then straight into the kitchen. You'd carry it, you
Through
know,
the utility room,
yeah,
yeah.
through the laundry room, and you know it was just all so much nicer. It was lovely, but what we hadn't realized and should have realized is that the escalation in values that was happening was an artificial product of
Yeah.
the subprime fiasco with mortgages. You know, because what was happening is that lenders were lending money to people who had no right to be borrowing that amount of money. I mean, they literally had to fog a mirror with their breath in order to qualify for the mortgage. They weren't checking on their ability to repay, and everybody was going, oh yeah, but you know, you buy this place for 500,000 and 3 months later it's worth 700,000 because that's, you know, the values were going up. at an extraordinary rate, but it was artificial. It was all being fueled by irresponsible lending, and of course, ultimately, that was what led to the
The crash,
fantastic global
which
crash, the
was,
financial
yeah,
crisis. I mean, just unbelievable in our
which was
lifetime.
2008, wasn't it?
Around
And
2008, yeah.
we'd bought in 2006.
I think that's correct.
So
And
I think, and I think it peaked at 2008.
I think that's about right. I think 2008 was about the crash. If we're not right about that, somebody in our listeners will say so, but
Tell us, I'm sure.
we can't be sure of exact dates. But
But they were
uh,
doing something different, weren't they? Instead of foreclosures, I might, when this happened, people were able to just in America just walk away, weren't they? They just walked because they
well,
couldn't get blood out of a stone.
I
They
think it was
handed their keys in and walked off.
I think it was a practical problem because suddenly this was such a huge financial crisis. Suddenly, the banks, as you say, people realized that they weren't going to be able to afford to pay back, and in fact, they'd owe more money than much more money than they'd
Yes,
borrowed, um, and they just realized they had to get out. And some of them would rip out all the fittings, wouldn't appliances,
yes.
it's essentially to rip off the bank. They would, and
Before they walked
the
out.
banks had so much of this going on that they couldn't cope. I mean, if you remember, um, we would be riding around in our bikes looking at homes that were deserted and not being even the air conditioning. I mean, you have to keep the air
No,
conditioning
so
on
they've gone
in
mouldy. The
Southwest
pools have
Florida.
turned green.
Yes, there were mosquitoes flying. I mean,
Yes,
it was
terrible.
like something out of a, sci-fi
Yeah, it was.
movie. So it was just horrendous. And this complete turnaround, uh, people were in dire straits, and the place, because of course this escalation in values had led to the builders of the homes building an immense number of homes that they were obviously selling. But many of these homes, most of these homes were not being bought to occupy. They were
Yeah,
being bought to flip,
yeah.
right? And
And
so
the
they
real
were being
estate
kept
agents
empty.
were buying like 6, 7 at a time, if you remember.
Correct, correct. And so the place became a sort of ghost town. You go around communities that were completely sold out, but hardly had a single person in them living in them, which was
Yes, I'd
really
forgotten that. Yeah.
extraordinary. And so that was a depressing, that sort of led to a kind of depressing feeling about the place. The developer went into had to declare Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and many developers did. I mean, this wasn't just peculiar to our community. A number of communities went bust, and it was all a little bit depressing. It didn't affect us,
I was just going to say it didn't affect us really
other
because we were
than the
going backwards and
values
forwards.
dropping. I mean, we had
Correct.
managed to sell our condo, I think, for a little bit more than we paid for it, but not much because we'd left it a bit late.
Yeah, because
Um,
we'd kept both places, hadn't we, for the kids
well,
to
we had
stay in?
to, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
we used it for that because we were still holding it. Uh, but so we got out of that, but with a little bit of money over what we'd paid, but not much. But the house that we had bought dropped like a stone in value, and as did all the homes, obviously around us. And I think, when I think, so the question is really that we need to talk about now, is why is it that we decided to sell? Well, I think that was part of it. I think that it sort of the whole thing became a little bit of a bad taste. That was one thing. The other thing was that me rather than you, I was getting a little bit bored with the lifestyle out there. It's beautiful sunshine all the time is a little bit monotonous. You miss the seasons. Look, we now live in the Cotswolds. We love the seasons, don't we? I mean,
Yes.
it's so lovely.
Culturally, it was
So very different.
very different culturally. But we did have London to come back to, but we did start feeling that quite a lot. And also there were, the grandchildren were coming more, and to see them it would,
It's expensive
to
because
fly them
we had
out,
to
and it
fly them
became
out. Yeah,
very expensive,
it did.
so that was another factor that we just thought, maybe
And
we need to
the
start rethinking it.
community itself
Changed,
had
didn't it?
changed so much, hadn't it? Because now there were
Yes,
all these
yeah.
additional people, because they weren't all empty properties. So, there were a lot of people who actually did buy to live there. And it was all changing. The character of it was changing. The use of the facilities was becoming
Yes, you couldn't
a
get by the
problem.
pool, the club
The
and
parties
spa
that they used to do lavish, fantastic parties. They still do great parties,
became
but
became
at
too
the
many
club and
people
spa,
and
but
too
too many
expensive.
people, and yeah, all of
Yeah,
that sort of thing. So
yeah.
it did, or I mean, really our time we felt, and also we had, there's no question about it, although we had fantastic staff, no doubt about that. When you're not actually on your premises, watching what your staff are doing, it is going to affect your business, even though they're great people, working diligently. I felt that our business needed our presence, and I was acutely aware that we were getting to the period when we'll start thinking about perhaps the day when we wouldn't be running our company, working every day anymore. Although it probably sounds to our listeners like we weren't doing a lot of work anyway, but we actually were still working. So the time had come. We really had to. We had having grandchildren. My father, got seriously ill and was on his final legs, and needed to get home to see that play out, be part of that. So all of these things meant that it was time, and so we sold up. And I don't think we regret it. I don't think we regret anything really, even though we lost a lot of money
No,
on the
not
property
at all.
side.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we have any regrets. We made the most terrific memories, and that's part of our why we like to go back there annually, right?
Yes, and friends, and we still know the place well. We still have a lot of friends there. We feel comfortable there. We know where all the shops are, all the restaurants,
But in
and we
terms of
have a beautiful home here. So
yeah, we're very lucky. But in terms of advice to others who are concerned, I think we would, or I think we are saying to people who say to us, well, we're thinking of getting a place. We always say, and I think this is what we should have done ourselves: rent there for a year. If
yeah,
you're thinking of buying a place in Greece or France or wherever it is,
or
I would
Spain.
say don't Spain, which another part another part of the story, because we did actually consider Spain after we'd finished with Florida, but we decided against it, and I think the reasons were because really what we like to go to different places. And I don't mean necessarily different locations, but even being in a different property each time. When we go back to Southwest Florida now, we rent a different property every time, and some are great and some are not so great. But we've actually rented some really nice properties over there, and it's a lot cheaper to rent than to buy.
And
Uh,
it's not, it's more than that. I mean, I think, it's the ongoing cost. Now, I would say, obviously, I mean, Southwest Florida has become very expensive based on our last visit, but people
Massive.
who, buying in France or Spain, the houses look cheap, 120,000 for, 2 bedroom or whatever. And they think, well, this is very reasonable. It's not I mean, it is the buying of it, but a lot of people think, well, that's not a lot of money. I can easily buy that. I don't even need a mortgage. I've got that sort of cash. But it goes more than that, doesn't it? It's the running cost. It's the backwards and forwards on aeroplanes. It's the taxes,
Well, that's what I
everything.
meant
The running
when
costs.
I said it's much cheaper to rent. I'm taking all of that into consideration.
Yes, yeah. But I was
And
I was trying to do that more on somewhere like Spain, which obviously isn't as far to fly and is not as
yeah,
expensive.
but you've
But
still
it's
got to
that
hold it you've still got to hold the property all the
exactly.
time you're not there and pay all the ongoing costs. And not only that, because you own a place, that's costing you a lot of money, you feel obligated to keep
to go
going there.
there.
And that
That's
stops you, because
correct.
that definitely happened to us, didn't it, Chris?
Well,
That
we never
definitely
went
happened.
anywhere. We
We
never
didn't
went
go
anywhere
anywhere
else.
else. And,
Never went anywhere
we
else.
always went, but we loved it. Don't get me wrong, we loved it.
Yeah.
We did stop us. But now we do traveling
We
to
go
a
to
lot of
different
different
places
places.
all the time. Yeah, which is fantastic.
So
And
I
again,
think,
it's that experiencing that we're doing. We're
yeah. So you see these people on that program, don't you? A Place in the Sun, and they go out and I mean, they go out and look at these places, and they just buy one. And I think,
well, they go for the sunshine, and the problem is,
well,
well,
as
us
we did,
giving
as we did. Well,
yes.
if they just, it's just so much better to rent for a while, even if it's 6 months, even if it's 3 months. Actually experience what it's like to live in the place
Yes.
before you decide. And also, you will get to know things. You'll get to know new locations by renting there for a while, where you might be looking. The other places you might be looking to buy, if that is what you decide to do. You'll
Well, and I
learn so
think
much
that
more.
now we're out of Brexit. But my understanding is that you can only go for 90 days anyway now.
Hmm.
So why not go for 90 days, rent somewhere,
Yeah,
see if you like it, and then when you go again for your next 90 days, go somewhere different, try a different
absolutely.
property,
That's
and see
so.
how that
Yeah, I
feels.
think that's such good advice. So that's what we would say if you are considering your own place in the sun. But we're glad we're glad we did it. We wouldn't have. I think we would have been well advised to have rented for a while, because I think we probably would have bought somewhere different, because if we were doing it again now, if we had sufficient money to be able to afford a place out there, we would go for that place near our community, wouldn't we? Copper Cove, which didn't have all these restaurant facilities and all
High
that stuff, which you
expenses,
don't
yeah,
need. And these restaurants
no,
never pay for themselves. The residents have to support them, as well
yeah,
as everything else you're supporting, landscaping and all that stuff. All these facilities, security guards, all that stuff has to be paid for. Lavish fountains, all this stuff they put in, which helps them sell more properties. But if we had bought in Copper Cove, they were beautiful houses, but they didn't have all those additional costs
no, a
attached,
bit more like here, isn't it? Just somewhere
much
here, you
more
just have
like
a
it.
nice house, and you just pay for your own house
Yeah.
and nothing else,
So
and what you
if we
spend
had
on
gone
other
and
things.
rented there for like 3 months, 6 months, better yet, a year, we would have learned all that, and we would have been much wiser buyers, rather than being sort of sucked in by the excitement of the moment and all that, making a decision from the heart rather than more from the head. So yeah, so I think that's a takeaway from this 5 part
Yes,
story of our Southwest Florida property owning journey.
yes,
So
absolutely.
as we come very close to the end, anything you'd like to say in addition before we close out this Florida story?
I don't think so. Other than I think I've said it before, and I think we've just said it. Then we have no regrets.
Yep.
It was a wonderful chapter in our lives. I'm starting to get a little bit emotional when I talk like this.
Yeah, me too.
And it was an incredible 12 years of our life. But we've closed that door now, and it's been closed for 10 years.
Yes.
So
But
it's
not
interesting that
completely
the
closed.
emotions are still no.
But
It's
not, because
interesting
we
that the
still have our
emotions are still
friends.
there.
We still have our
True,
friends that we
that's
go over
true.
and see, even though a lot of them are going into God's waiting room. So
Well, we
we
still see
had
them.
that. The other thing is, we kept in touch with our tennis friends, didn't we? From the moment that and that's how we discovered pickleball, our passion, pickleball. We didn't play it when we lived
Yes,
in Southwest Florida. We go back and play it there now. And Naples, where we lived, is the Wimbledon of global pickleball. So it's great to go back and play our favorite sport there in the Wimbledon of pickleball,
yes. It's
which is
funny how
Naples.
life has that. Funny has that life of a connection when one door opens, another one closes. Sorry, another one opens in a completely different format because
Yep.
again, as I said, in the past when you're doing something, you don't. How can you possibly know these things. I mean, we didn't even know pickleball existed. It hadn't really taken off in Naples, and yet by living there and meeting people, you know, knowing people and going back, you suddenly hear of something which caused something different, stopped us playing tennis, and we've never played tennis again
No,
since.
and pickleball's opens up such a new vista of life
Yes.
for us, which is fantastic. And if you're wondering, if any of you listeners are wondering what the hell we're talking about when we mention pickleball, there are previous episodes on our this podcast which talk all about that. We have interviews with people that we hope you'll find interesting. Go and have a look at those, and do try pickleball if you haven't tried it. You really need to do that. Anyway, we are wrapping up now because we are rapidly running out of time. Thank you very much for your support, everyone. Please subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. Your support, your feedback is so important to us. We love it. And but for now, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Thank you, listeners.
Talk to you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.